internal processes, its foundations, its supporters, and the amount of money that they get today to sustain that program. I think that there has not been the degree of vigilance on the part and oversight on the part of that department and the higher administration to question where the funding is going to, how many trips are being taken that are necessary, that are not necessary, whether in fact the student athletes are adhering to a strong academic foundation, mission, whether they're complying with all of the academic requirements in order to be able to follow the path of being in the athletic department. It is, in my viewpoint, absolutely no student fee money should be going directly to the athletic department because it has its budget. It already has its clear lines in the line items in the budget that clearly are set up to be self-sustaining. Somewhere in those line items, somewhere in the overall management of those funds, the funds are not going to where they're supposed to go. If that department is finding itself in need of, having to come to other sources in the university in order to help supplement its budget. That department was created to be self-sustaining. And it does have a tremendous amount of support, and it has a very strong foundation and development office that goes after additional funds. Right now, the key is the student organizations that are in desperate need of continuing their focus, which is to recruit and retain students. Excuse me. That is the principal focus that we should be concentrating right now, all of our funds and available monies that we have. And those student fee monies are designated for that purpose. They're specifically focused and earmarked to be able to support these kinds of services. We're an Hispanic serving institution. This institution continues to ride on the back of this being an Hispanic serving institution. It takes the monies and it takes advantage of being that, yet Hispanic student services are one of the areas, as Katie mentioned, El Centro de la Raza and all the services that they provide, are the first ones that are targeted to be cut. In addition, professional path, we've done very little to promote a professional path for our students, and that's where career services becomes extremely important in supporting those programs in career services that will direct our students and have a reason for our students to be able to be preparing for professional development needs to be channeled. I think that we have concentrated on, finding the easy way out to resolving problems, finding the easy source of money, and because the students' fee money has, in the process and the procedures that have been followed through the Student Fee Review Board, have been in the past very accessible to the athletic department. So they found it very easy to come in and request those funds instead of going back and really finding the ways in which that they can leverage the monies that they do get in order to grow their budgets to continue to be self-sustaining. So I don't think I think the whole structure and everything that's happening with the Student Fee Review Board process. Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right. Jacob.
Thank you. I'll stay seated on this one. To answer the question directly, no. Personally, I would not support the use of student fee money to subsidize athletic operations. But I think, as the other two candidates have already stated, that's inevitably a decision that should be left up to the student body as a whole. So I would also say that I oppose the notion that athletics as part of the general student fee budget is sort of a sacred cow and cannot be touched. I think that you set aside money as a permanent funding source for revenue streams that go to capital expenditures, and that's where the rest of that money seems to go. You know, we have to pay debt service over time, so we really can't tinker that much with it. But that same logic doesn't apply to the athletic budget. I I mean, with all of the other concerns and needs of this university on the table, I think it's required of us to engage people in an ongoing and frank discussion about where this money should be going on a regular basis and not always go with the same status quo. Now, I think that Katie brought up some important issues, however. Besides the student fee money, for me what's more troubling is the notion that instruction and general funds, that's the money the state provides the university, is cross-subsidizing the athletic department. And that's not the only place it's going. Money meant for students in the classroom and for professors and for research is also going to cross-subsidize the Alumni Association and the University Foundation. That money is not accounted for in the general operating budget of this university, and it's lacking, to say it's lacking transparency is to say the least, because it took a 9-month audit of this university to really uncover how much money is seeping out of the students' foray and going to cross-subsidize these other areas. So what would I push for? Well, number one, I think that we're in agreement that we need to open up that discussion at the Student Fee Review Board level. And number two, I think we need to engage the regions in a broader discussion about a comprehensive policy for this university and its budgeting process that gets us to a place where we as a community are comfortable with the level of subsidization that we are giving to athletics, to the foundation, and to the Alumni Association. Here's the difficult reality. There is no university in this country that does not subsidize athletics with student money. There's none. That's a fact. It's going to happen. And I'm not going to sit up here and say that I'm going to stop the practice, because it just won't stop. But what we can do is make it open and transparent. We can put it on the table, and we can get to a level of subsidization that everyone is okay with, or at least has some sort of buy-in and knows what's going on. And that's just the reality of how universities in this country operate. And I think that, for me, I don't like to engage in these discussions that places an athlete against a student, or different stakeholders against other stakeholders, because at the end of the day, many of our student athletes and the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, HACU, has stated that university athletic programs are a great recruiting tool to bring in minority students to higher education. And so I don't think that we can do a carte blanche anti-athletics approach, because there's unintended consequences when you shrink those programs. And one of them would be the ability to recruit Latino and African American students into higher education, especially within this state. So it's a complicated issue, but it's one that I feel comfortable taking the lead on. And it's one that I think we can articulate a clear vision for this university and really take some steps forward to bringing everybody to the table.
Thank you. All right. Joseph?
I think this is a really good question, and I think it's even more important to answer clearly because it's a question that a lot of people get very confused. When you look at student services provided through the SFRB, you have to look at what these are actually funding. And personally, I haven't been to an athletics game in years. I've been to one in the last several years. So it's not that I'm pro-athletics, but I would have to piggyback on the point made by Jacob that these are services that are provided for students. If you were to tell the student body that they could no longer go to an athletics game for free, there would probably be some problems. Of course, nobody wants to fund athletics when they see that they're in debt and things like that. But as the point was made, no university that I've heard of, I don't know the statistics nationwide, doesn't help fund services through athletics. And I wouldn't call it subsidized. I would think that it provides services, and I think those services are skewed. But I would, moving into the point about the SFRB, I think more needs to be done to make sure that process is clear and to ensure that the amount of money paid through the SFRB with student fees is allocated properly towards things that provide direct services towards students. I mean, it's not something that is increasing shareholders in other university groups, but directly focusing on students, and I think that that's the main priority. And when this comes down to it, it is a complicated subject, and I think more people need to look at it, because athletics is a major debate within our university, and I think more needs to be done. But I think what's more importantly, and what more importantly needs to happen is the willingness to discuss this openly. Because I think that there are sides to both. This funding wouldn't go to athletics unless there was some reason. Whether or not the reason is completely valid or not, it is debatable, obviously. And there are probably amounts of money that shouldn't go to athletics that go through student fees. But I think it's important